From ABC News, I'm Zachary Quiche. Immigrant families separated at the border are slowly being reunited.
The Trump administration says that about 500 of the 2,300 kids taken from their parents under the zero-tolerance policy are back with their families. But at the heart of the matter, says Miami Mayor Francis Suarez,
we're a country of immigrants. That is what made us strong and what makes us special. And it's something we shouldn't run from, we shouldn't hide from. It's not a partisan issue, it's a humanitarian issue.
ABC's Jim Ryan reporting in San Francisco. Protesters gathering outside of a courthouse as a U.S. District Court judge hears a lawsuit brought by 9 people who have temporary protected status. They're challenging the Trump administration's effort to end the program for people from certain countries, including Sudan, Nicaragua, and Honduras. The House of Representatives may be struggling to move forward on an immigration overhaul, but it did pass a measure today on the nation's opioid epidemic.
The opioid package contains Medicaid and Medicare reforms, a review of current opioid prescriptions, and screening for opioid abuse as part of Medicare's initial exam. It gives law enforcement new tools to detect mailed packages containing Chinese fentanyl. The measure got broad bipartisan support in the House. Companion legislation is already teed up in the Senate. Megan Hughes, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Defending privacy. The Supreme Court has ruled police generally need warrants if they want to view people's cell phone records.
In dissent, Justice Anthony Kennedy and Justice Samuel Alito, joined by Justice Clarence Thomas, what they said was that this is something that government has been doing. It can get your phone records from the phone company about who you've called without a search warrant, because by subscribing to a phone service, you don't have that reasonable expectation of privacy.
ABC's Terry Moran. This is ABC News.
Step 1, you signed a lease for new office space. Step 2, you notified your clients and updated your letterhead. Step 3, what is Step 3? Oh, right, now you have to move everything. Relax. Staples has you covered with moving boxes, packing tape, bubble roll, everything you need. All at great low prices. And now at Staples, select moving boxes are only $1. Staples, come in store today and get your moving supplies in one easy step.
N62318, in-store only. Good on SKU 742294 and 834945.
Successful organizations have experts, marketing experts, finance experts, logistics experts, but few have cloud experts. Fortunately, CDW has cloud experts, lots of them. CDW Cloud Consulting Services can help your company develop smart strategic cloud solutions. They'll work within your budget and requirements to help your company get ahead of the competition and maximize your cloud investment. Visit cdw.com/cloud to learn more about our cloud consulting service. Cyber attack, data breach, malware, botnets. Think your business is immune? It's not. Malware is alive and well on most corporate networks, so you need active malware detection. You need CDW. CDW has a complimentary service called Threat Check. It passively monitors your network to detect malicious traffic and other risks. CDW's security experts will then analyze and explain the results and provide security recommendations. Learn more at cdw.com/threatcheck. CDW. People who get it.
You can't print invoices without ink. You can't print status reports, spreadsheets, or that report due in 12 minutes without ink. No, you can't print anything without ink. Luckily, Staples has a huge selection of ink and toner in stock and at great prices every day. This week only, buy 1 HP ink at Staples and get a second 30% off. So stock up now, because you can't afford to run out of ink.
Ends 4/14/18. See store associate or staples.com for details. Restrictions may apply.
Money Talk Radio is expanding. 740 AM, 103.9 FM, and 96.9 FM. The Money Talk Radio Network, WSBR.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
My name is Robert Seidel. I want to welcome you to my show, Ask Robert, the Women's Prophet. My show is dedicated to women's legal, financial, and social issues. I've been an attorney for over 30 years, specializing in tax and estate planning, real estate, and corporate and business transactions, as well as exposed to other areas of the law. My offices are here in Boca Raton and New York. My show can be heard on radio on 740 AM and 96.9 and 103.9 FM, and viewed live or recorded on Facebook at Ask Robert or on YouTube at AMP2TV Ask Robert. The call-in number for the show is 888-721-0074 or email me at robert@askrobert.co. Okay, welcome to the show today. This is Robert Seibel. My show, Ask Robert, the Women's Prophet. The show is all about women's social, legal, and financial issues. I have a fantastic guest today. Her name is Helene Reisman. She's a criminal attorney based in Fort Lauderdale, and she's one of the most knowledgeable attorneys that I know down here in South Florida, and I want to welcome her to my show today. Hello,
Hi.
Helene.
Hi, Robert. Nice to be here.
Great.
A pleasure.
Good, good, good. Okay, we're going to get right into it because we have a lot to talk about today. Right off the bat, what types of cases, Helene, are considered criminal cases?
Okay, Robert. Excellent question. And what we do, the law firm is called Reisman & Reisman. It's a family law firm. I work with my brother. I've been an attorney for over 35 years, practicing in criminal law exclusively. That's my specialty. A criminal law case is any time you have contact with a police officer, and it usually will require a court appearance. And if that is the case, you're going to have to present yourself in court. You're going to have to enter some sort of a plea, whether it be guilty, not guilty, or no contest. And as a result of that plea, your freedom, your liberty, some financial issues are all going to be affected. So it's very important for you to know what your rights are and to know what the consequences are going to be when you enter a plea. And that's what we're going to be talking about over the next hour and sharing some information with your audience about.
Great, great. Okay. And Helene, tell me, what's the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony case?
Okay. Many people in the audience don't understand the difference, but a misdemeanor in Florida is a crime punishable up to 1 year in county jail. Okay. Types of crimes that can be considered misdemeanors in Florida include petty theft. God forbid you go into a Publix or a Walgreens and you take an item and the value of the item is below $300. That is called petty theft, and that is punishable depending upon whether it's your first, second, or third offense, up to 1 year in the county jail. Other things. Possession of marijuana. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's still against the law to smoke marijuana in Florida unless you have some sort of medical exemption. But if you are in possession of marijuana, it's against the law, it's a misdemeanor, and there can be consequences for it. A very other common misdemeanor is domestic violence. Domestic violence is a very special type of crime, and Robert, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but it could be a misdemeanor or a felony depending upon the circumstances. And then another very common misdemeanor in the state of Florida is DUI. DUI stands for driving under the influence. And in Florida, you can be charged with driving under the influence either by alcohol and or a controlled substance. That means if you are being prescribed a drug by your doctor, but it somehow affects your ability to operate a motor vehicle, you could be charged with DUI. And the consequences for DUI are extremely severe. It can never be erased from your record. You're going to potentially have to do jail time. Your insurance will be raised, and it'll be something that'll follow you for the rest of your life. So you really have to think about things before you get behind the wheel of a car.
Helene, before we go into felony, I know I have my good guest, Bruce Galloway, on the line. Bruce is head of Galloway Capital, and he's just going to give us a quick update on what's happening on Wall Street for a couple of minutes. Bruce, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
How are you,
Bruce.
Robert?
Okay, give me an update. What's going on this week, Bruce?
Well, there's a lot of news out this week, and we've had, believe it or not, we've had 8 down days in a row. You know, everyone thinks that there's a rip-roaring bull market out there, but it's not. A lot of stocks have been hammered, and a lot of stocks are hitting, 10 to 12 to 15% corrections. And the reason is there was basically 2 blows to the head this week, and starting last week also. One is a continuation of the trade tension that's going on. President Trump is set in his ways and hunkering down on the trade issues and not budging on the trade issues. He's proving very, very loyal to his base, and he wants to, accommodate his base. And his base is obviously in the industrial belt, the Midwest. The parts of the country that has been decimated by cheap imports, where factories have closed and cities have basically been put into urban blight because of all the lost jobs and all the lost businesses. So he's really hunkering down on the trade issues and stating that now he's going after all of Europe and China, and they're not backing down either. I mean, they're saying, if he's going to, hit us with 20% tariffs, we're going to hit them with 20% tariffs, and they've selected, his loyal states. They're going after, agriculture, they're going after whiskey, they're going after, products that are made in, the states where, he won, to try to hit him below the belt, basically. So that's the trade wars going on, and the stock market has been very nervous about the trade wars. And the other blow to the head that happened is the Fed. The Fed has gotten a lot more hawkish right now, and the consensus has been that the Fed's going to raise rates 3 times this year, and now they're hinting that they're possibly going to raise rates 4 times. And I personally think that's going to be a huge mistake if the Fed's too hawkish. For every quarter of a point that the Fed raises rates, it costs the taxpayers an additional $50 billion in added interest expense on the debt. We have about $20 trillion in debt out there. So if the rates go up 1 percentage point, that's 100 basis points. That's $200 billion just to service the debt. So all the gains that we've gotten from the tax cuts and the repatriation of capital from overseas into the United States is going to be pissed away, basically, in added interest expense. So this is a big problem, and I would have thought that Donald Trump nominated Jay Parker to take a more dovish stance, because don't forget, Trump is a real estate guy. Okay, so the 2 biggest problems for higher interest rates are, one, real estate, and one is debt. Real estate goes down. The value of real estate goes down when interest rates go up, because it's a factor of the cap rates. So as interest rates go up, real estate values are going to go down, and if interest rates go up too rapidly, and real estate comes down too far, it's going to create a crunch, because the equity values could fall below the debt values. And if the equity values fall below the debt values, there's going to be a deluge of banks calling on their debt to be repaid, which could create another crisis.
Back to 2008 when we had that crisis.
Yeah, exactly. So it's getting choppy. Today the market's up. Today the market rebounded a little bit after 8 days of straight down. Market's up about 150 points today. I think it's just basically a dead cat bounce. As far as the trade friction goes, I do think that Trump and his counterparts will probably work something out. I think this is all posturing on Trump's behalf to try to get, the foreign markets to open up to American imports. Because we export probably $500 billion worth of goods, and we import $1.3 trillion worth of goods. So most of the country benefits off of cheap imports. We all go to Walmart, we all go to Lowe's, we all go to Home Depot, and we buy cheap stuff made in China. So we benefit, but the people that really get hurt by it are the industrial belt, where tens of millions of jobs have been lost over the last 30 years and have been exported to places like Mexico and China and Korea and Japan.
Bruce, a quick question, if I may interrupt you. I noticed this in the last 8 or 9 days. The Dow has been down, but the NASDAQ and the S&P have been going up. Does that mean that people are buying tech stocks, and but they're not buying the stocks that are more affected by the tariff or the industrial stocks. Is that pretty much the reason?
The area that's really been outperforming is the Russell. The Russell are the smaller stocks, and the smaller stocks are basically domestic stocks. They're not dependent on imports and exports, and they're not involved with that as much as like a Procter & Gamble or a Minnesota Mining or a Deere or a Caterpillar, you know. So the smaller stocks have been basically pretty much doing better. But it's also, you know, the smaller stocks have been underperforming for 10 years. So there's a real paramount shift going on from the leadership companies, which have been the strong growth stocks, the NASDAQ stocks, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world. They've been getting all the money. They've been getting all the cash inflows because they're technically very strong. The charts are very strong, and they keep on going up because the algorithms keep on buying them and buying them and buying them, and they're at the point where they're outrageously priced. You know, like a Netflix is $180 billion. They don't even make any money. They lose money. I mean, at Disney, which has been around for 100 years, you know, is trading at $130 billion, $140 billion, less than Netflix, and they have, you know, $130 billion worth of hard assets, and they make, you know, $8 billion in cash flow.
Right.
So,
okay.
You know,
all right, Bruce, I want to thank you.
All the algorithms and everything. But anyway, there's a paramount shift going on. Money's coming out of the high growth stocks into the deep value stocks and the value stocks, and most of them are smaller and you know, micro cap stocks.
Okay, we got to cut it now, Bruce. I got to get back to my guests here in the studio. I, as always, thank you for that terrific report. You're always right on the money, literally, and very concise, very, very helpful, and I appreciate it again. I have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch shortly. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, let's get back now. Helene, we were starting to get into what constitutes a felony case.
Okay, a felony case in the state of Florida is any case that is punishable up a term of years in Florida State Prison versus, you know, a jail, a county jail. There's a third degree, second degree, and first degree. Third degree punishable up to 5 years, 15 years, 30 or life. Examples of anything like a felony. Possession of any kind of drug that is not a marijuana, for which you don't have a prescription, is a felony. Okay. So if you're having your purse, if you're driving in the car, and you may be you have a relative and you are carrying a drug for that relative, and the police for whatever reason search your purse and you have a pill that doesn't belong to you, you can be charged with a felony in the state of Florida, and there can be some really serious consequences. Examples of other types of felonies. Possession of marijuana, whether it's manufacturing, if you're growing some plants for yourself, if you're distributing, or if you're selling it in close relation to a school, bumps it up from a misdemeanor to a felony. If you are convicted in the state of Florida of any drug charge, there is a mandatory driver's license suspension. So the consequences for drug charges in Florida, because of the prevalence of how many drugs we have, is very, very severe. We talked about that misdemeanor being if you go into Walmart or Publix and take something of value of less than $300. Well, if you go into a store and take something of value greater than $300, and this happens unfortunately to a lot of women, and I hate to say that, but we find ourselves, you know, when the economy is not doing so good, people are uncertain, they need some goods. If you go to a Macy's or a Stein's or anything like that, and you take an item and the value is greater than $300, you are looking at a felony. And that's called grand theft. And the state takes that very severely because this is a depletion of resources to companies, and therefore the prices of things go up all across the board. So that could be a felony charge. Other types of felony charge that we do at Reisman & Reisman: burglary charges, robbery charges, sex charges, and white-collar crimes. A lot of females and males are employed in businesses where they do books, bookkeeping, you know, they're doing accounts. And you can be charged with embezzlement or white-collar crimes as a result of that. And the consequences and what you're looking at are quite high. These are felonies in the state of Florida.
What about credit card fraud? You hear about that all the time.
All the time. So credit card fraud can happen to many people, and they can be the victim of credit card fraud.
Right.
We are hearing now that, you go to the gas station and you swipe your card, and someone
Happened to
takes
me.
your number, okay? And they use it against you. So if this happens to you and you're the victim of credit card fraud, it's important to know that you immediately contact your company and let them know that you're a victim of fraud. And then you're going to have to be very careful about all your accounts and make sure you stay on top of them so that you are not ripped off. Now, there are liabilities in place so that you don't have to have your accounts withdrawn, but there are certain safeguards that you have to be in charge for because it could ruin your credit. So it's important. If you are a victim, you can try to contact the state of Florida and see if they can assist you in getting back some of the lost documents or finances that you find yourself in.
Mhm.
But if you are charged with actually participating in a scheme to defraud people,
Yeah.
now we're talking about a felony, and
Right.
you're going to be looking at some very, very severe consequences.
All right. Okay, this is an important question, I'm sure, to most people. What are the consequences of going to court and closing a case without a lawyer? You hear people say, well, I'm going to go to court without, I don't need a lawyer.
That's a really good question because, everybody says, well, why do I really need a lawyer? You need a lawyer because you need someone who's going to protect your rights. That's what it comes down to. Anything you do in court, and you may walk out of there with just a slap on the wrist. By that I mean you have to pay a fine, you might get probation. These are things that follow you around. What do I mean? Okay, let's say you're going to apply for a job. Any employer is going to do a background check. And if a crime comes up in your background check, they can decide not to hire you. Florida is a right-to-work state, and what that means is they can deny you a job for any reason whatsoever. And if you have a criminal history, believe me, they're going to go on to the next applicant. Beside the fact that it can prevent you from getting a job, believe it or not, it can prevent you from getting housing. Many women especially find themselves, they may be a single mom, they maybe have gone through a divorce, and now their finances have changed and they have to rent instead of buy. When you sit a rent application and they do a background check, if you have a conviction on your record for a misdemeanor or felony, you can be denied housing in that place. And I've seen women not being able to rent a place for them and their children. And it seems to affect women much more than men because they can't or don't have the finances to buy. They have to rent. And in rent, they're much more specific as to why they can deny you. The other things that can happen, if you have a professional license, if you're a nurse, if you're a bookkeeper, if you're a doctor, if you're a licensed real estate broker or financial advisor, if you have a conviction on your record, it can affect your license. So these are consequences that you may not think about when you go to court, but they are going to come back to haunt you. And one last thing I want to touch on is, believe it or not, immigration status. I don't want to get into the issue of immigration law, but if you are not a U.S. citizen, and even if you're just a green card holder, if you go to court and close a criminal case, there will 100% be immigration consequences, and it could affect you when you're going to go change your status. So it is so important before you go to court to pick up the phone and get a consultation with an experienced attorney who will tell you not only what your immediate consequences are going to be, but what your long-term consequences are going to be as a result of your actions.
Fascinating. By the way, Helene, why is your firm, Reisman & Reisman, different than other criminal law firms?
Well, like I said at the beginning, Robert, I've been practicing criminal law exclusively for almost 35 years. If I had to sum it up in one word, I'd say experience. You have to be experienced in the field that you're in. I only do criminal law. And who you know. Like everybody else in life, you got to know the actors and the parties, okay? So I know all the judges. I know all the prosecutors. I used to work for the state attorney's office. My brother, who is my law partner, used to work for the public defender's office. We are a family approach. We take it, we were together, you hire the firm of Reisman & Reisman, you get two heads, two lawyers with a lot of experience. Combined, we have over 60 years of criminal law experience working to you to help you win your case, because that's what the focus is. We're aggressive, We're trustworthy. And we also offer anybody in the listening office a free initial consultation where they can call us up, make an appointment, come to our office. I'll pull a copy of the police report. We'll review it together. We'll go over their defenses, and we'll tell you what we know we can do to help you in your case.
Good, good. Okay, so let's assume that I'm arrested for the first time. What can I expect to happen?
Well, as soon as you're arrested, obviously, if you're in a vehicle, your car is going to be towed, okay? Your car is also going to be searched, because if you are arrested in your car, the law requires the police officer to inventory your car because it's going to be towed. And anything found in the car that's illegal, you'll be charged with.
So they don't have to get my permission, they can go right in?
That is correct. If you're arrested for a charge, they can search your vehicle because they're going to impound your vehicle. Okay.
Can they look in the car before they arrest me? I know, supposing they stop me for a speeding ticket, and then the guy says, well, I want to look in the car.
Excellent question. And Robert, you know what the answer is? You have a right to say no to that police officer. The only time they can search your car without your permission is if they feel that they see a crime being committed. For instance,
smell drugs.
There you go. They smell marijuana. Now they say, "Oh, there's drugs here," or they see some sort of open pill box or a gun. And now they have probable cause to search your vehicle. Otherwise, you have a constitutional right to tell the officer, "No, I do not give you permission to search the vehicle."
So that would be an illegal search then, if
that
they
is
did
correct.
that without placing you under arrest.
That is correct. But I want to give everybody in the audience some advice. The side of the road is not the time to argue with a police officer. We find this many times. Now in South Florida, a lot of police officers are wearing body cams.
Yeah.
So everything is recorded.
Yeah.
When you're on the side of the road, they have an advantage. They're wearing a gun. They have authority. Don't fight with a police officer at the side of the road. Make your voice known. Say, no, I don't give you permission to search. But if they're going to search anyway, we attack that later in a court of law where you have your rights and you're entitled to have the full value of the Constitution behind you. If you fight with the officer at the side of the road, you're going to find yourself with another charge called resisting arrest. And then you're going to be making yourself much more headaches unnecessarily. So be respectful to two officers. They do have a very important job. They serve the community. You might have encountered a police officer who you feel wasn't treating you properly, but that's to be decided later in court. Don't argue with them on the side of the road. That's my best advice for you.
Okay, one of the biggest questions that always comes up, you get stopped by an officer for, let's say, speeding, and he smells some alcohol in your breath, and he says, all right, I want you to blow into a breathalyzer. I've been told time and time again, don't blow, because then you're automatic. If you exceed the limit, you're automatically implicating yourself. You're almost like pleading guilty. On the other hand, if you don't blow, my understanding is you're automatically arrested.
Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about that.
What do you do?
That's a great question.
Yeah, number one question.
Because you know what? It's
you hear
common.
about it all the time.
Most everybody goes out to dinner, and they have a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
Okay, and you get behind the wheel of a car, and a police officer stops you, and he smells alcohol.
Yeah.
And you know that he's going to go right into his DUI mode.
Yep.
I can't begin to tell you, I would say easily over 300 jury trials for DUIs.
Right.
I used to work for a firm called Essen & Essen, and we were on 60 Minutes as the top-ranking firm for DUI defense. And here's my advice to you. The state of Florida, the law is, if you are driving with a blood alcohol level of 0.08 or above, there is a presumption that you're under the influence of alcohol. So, police officer decides after you do field sobriety exercises, he's going to arrest you for DUI. He then is going to ask you, are you going to take a breath test? Many people don't know this, but when you get a driver's license, you have consented in advance to give a breath test. If you read the last sentence in your driver's license, it says that with this license, you are consenting to participate in your test. You do have a right to refuse to take a breath test. You will get a 1-year license suspension if you refuse to take a breath test.
Automatically.
Pretty much automatically. You have a right to have a hearing at the DMV, but the standard of proof is very low. And if you refuse a breath test, it is very likely you're going to have a 1-year automatic license suspension. if you take a breath test and you blow over the legal limit, now there's a presumption that you are impaired. There can be things wrong with the breath test machine. Remember, it's a machine like everything else. There's a lot of things that can happen, maintenance mistakes, and there's a lot of things that the machine doesn't take in effect. You know, if you, Robert, or I take, we're going to blow into that same machine, doesn't take into account you're a male, I'm a female, doesn't take into account our different absorption rates. So there's a lot of arguments as attorneys we can make once the breath test comes into evidence against you. And I personally have prevailed many a times with even a breath test
the credibility of the
reliability of the instrument and the person who gave it to you, and there's a host of defenses available for you. So it's a decision you have to make, and here's what I basically say. Cooperate with the police. Don't volunteer any extra information, okay? If you feel that you can do the field sobriety exercises, do them, because if you do well on them, it'll help you. It goes a long way to help convince a jury you were not guilty. And I would generally, if it was in my situation, not take a breath test, because why give the state of Florida any more evidence?
That's the way I see it.
And if you refuse the breath test, yes, you may have a driver's license suspension, but you'll avoid a DUI conviction. And that's the most important
because
thing.
If they get you over 0.8, then you're nailed. It's pretty much...
It'll be much more difficult because you have something called the presumption of impairment.
Let's get away from the breathalyzer. But supposing the officer says, I want you to walk the line. What about that? Can you refuse that?
Okay, excellent question. Those are called field sobriety exercises. I'm sure you've seen it on television all the time. Touch your finger to your nose. Put one leg up in the air, fake for balance. Say your alphabet. Okay, walk the line. These are all called field sobriety exercises. There's very little scientific reliability to them, but you have a right under Florida law to refuse to take these exercises. And you do, and you should, because you're just giving the state of Florida ammunition to use against you. Why do it? There's there's so many reasons why you won't do well on them. A, you might be tired. B, you're nervous. Police officers just stopped you. You're under investigation. You might have health issues. You might be a little overweight like I am, okay? And these will all affect your performance on field sobriety exercises. The police are going to say it's because you're impaired, not because of the other reasons. Now, I've had other people say, I can do them. Sometimes when you drink a little more than you should, you feel that you're able to do things that you may not be able to do. So my best advice is if you refuse the field sobriety exercise, that's less evidence that the state of Florida will have to introduce against you. And now, remember, to win a case, the state of Florida has to convince a jury that you are guilty beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. That's a very high standard of proof. And if there's not enough evidence, a lack of evidence is one way you get reasonable doubt. And the presumption of innocence protects the person who's charged with a crime, and therefore the appropriate verdict is not guilty. So don't give them any more evidence than necessary is the answer.
But notwithstanding, based on your advice that you refuse to take the field sobriety, you refuse to do the breathalyzer, do I understand correctly that the chances are you're going to be arrested on the spot?
That's correct.
So you got to be prepared, on the other side of the coin, to be able to be going to jail that night, as opposed to them writing you out a ticket and saying, you got to come back to court in a week or a month or whenever.
I have news for you, Robert. Whether you take the field sobriety exercises or take the breath test, you're going to get arrested anyway. Once the police officer has it in his mind that you're DUI, the number of people who are actually let go or given a break on the side of the road is very minimal. You are going to get arrested. And so you've got to think long term, your defense. You want to win your case. You don't want a DUI on your record. My advice, after 35 years, refuse the breath test, refuse the field sobriety exercises. Yes, you're going to be taken to jail. Yes, you're going to be allowed to bond out within 24 hours, and then you need an attorney with experience in your corner fighting for your rights. And I think that you'll have a reasonable shot of beating your DUI.
Okay. This is, of course, happens to a lot of people, and it's very, very important advice, and I think very, very good advice. I just want to break away for a moment or two to speak about a couple of my sponsors, one being Froelich Financial. Froelich Financial is a estate planning and life insurance firm headed by Mark Froelich, who's a superb estate planner, insurance planner. He's based right here in Boca Raton. Mark has been doing this for many, many, many years. He handles very large clients as well as smaller ones, and I recommend his services highly. He's very, very professional. He's very innovative, creative, comes up with ideas that a lot of other insurance people just don't even think about. And I would urge you to consider giving him a call. He can be reached right here in Boca, 561-807-8707. Another one of my sponsors, Global Loan. Global Loan is an international private finance company that actually raises capital, both equity or debt, for commercial real estate or business transactions, and they can actually put together loans in the hundreds of millions if necessary, as little as $1 million up to hundreds of millions. They operate globally, which is quite unusual today, and again, they can be reached at 800-878-FUND. That's 878-FUND or 3863. And finally, point that I've always made to my viewers and listeners is that to be successful in business, in my opinion, the opinion of most people, is that to be successful, you got to look successful. And people like to do business with people that they have confidence in, and part of it is good grooming. And good grooming boils down to not only how you dress, but how you look, your hair, your nails, everything. Now, frankly, the best place in the town of Boca, where I go, is a place called Salon Oasis. They're on Glades Road. They're at 6100 Glades. They're a full-service salon, one of the largest salons I've ever seen, and I include New York, L.A., Miami. They're really gigantic. They do coloring, they do styling, they do nails and pedicures and manicures. They have an esthetician there. They do waxing. So it's really a terrific place. You can reach them by phone at 561-482-9610. Okay, so now with that said, let's go on. And this is another area which is very, very important to my listeners and viewers, and that is, what should a lady do if she's the victim of a domestic abuse?
You know, Robert, that is a very important issue for me, too. As a woman, as a practicing attorney in the South Broward area, in the South Florida area, I'd like to take a minute to talk to women.
Good.
You shouldn't allow yourself to be a victim. It's easier said than done. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation, you have children, you may not be working, you may be at home, and you feel like you have no alternative. There are always alternatives out there. You have to take the first step. You have to be brave enough to reach out and ask for help. There are many agencies that are available. You need to pick up the phone and call one of these agencies. They can help you find a place to stay with your children temporarily until you get on the feet. Many of these agencies and places, which I've gone to and volunteered at, are really nice places where they can train you if you don't have the experience in a field. They can give you and your children psychological help so that you can feel the strength, so that you can therefore make better decisions for yourself. And until you do, you can have a safe place to stay. There are also legal options available for you. It may be a situation where you're very scared of your husband because there's been a history of abuse. And therefore, we have a system in place where you do not have to pay any money, believe it or not, and you can get something called a restraining order. Okay. Anything else you do, you file for divorce. It's in Broward, it's $450 to file for a divorce. Okay. You file a civil suit, there's a fee. Okay. But if you're requesting an order of protection, domestic violence, a restraining order, there's no fee. So you don't have to be scared about that. You don't have to pay any money. But you go down to the courthouse.
Do it yourself.
And you fill out some very easy paperwork. They make it very simple for you. And you allege right there in black and white, why are you in fear of your spouse, the person you're living with? You immediately gets reviewed by a judge, and if he feels that there is warranted relief, he'll sign an order, and that restraining order goes into effect immediately. It is then served on the party, and then that party can choose to come to court to say, no, it's not correct,
right.
Or if he fails to appear, the temporary restraining order becomes a permanent restraining order. And a permanent restraining order can be entered forever, or it can be entered for a term of years. It's up to the judge. If your spouse or your significant other contests it, a judge will listen with an open mind. You present your facts, and you don't need an attorney necessarily. You can come to tell them yourself. And then he'll make a determination if he feels you are in fear. And if you are in fear for yourself or your children, he'll enter this restraining order. Now, you'll say, what does a piece of paper do to help me? It does help you, because there'll be limitations on the party against them. They must turn over any firearms they have, because if they don't, it's a violation of restraining order and they can go to jail. Number 2, you'll have a protection that that party cannot come within 500 feet of you, where you work, where you live, where your children go to school. And if they do, you just pick up the phone and say, I see him, he's here, he's violated, and he can be arrested for that, okay? And then he's facing jail time. So it is a very important piece of paper because it can give you peace of mind. And there are many men who, it takes a long time for them to get it. And sometimes when you let the system show them that they have might and force, they'll sit back because they may not be afraid of you, but they're going to be afraid of going to jail. So it has an effect.
Will the order of protection, supposing a wife goes in and applies for the order of protection against her husband, will it also extend to her children?
She can. She can apply for herself and her children.
Right.
Now, obviously, the court is going to allow potentially the father to see his kids. That proceeds in family court. And sometimes, many times, there's an action running simultaneously because there might be a divorce proceeding that's running along with the restraining order, and then there's a determination made. But if there's a fear that the husband could take some retribution out to the children, or there's been violence against the children, he won't be allowed to see them unless there's another party present. So there are forces in place to protect children. They're not going to let the parent who might be an abuser see the children, without another third party present, because Florida has a system called guardian ad litems that are appointed to protect juveniles and to protect children, to make sure that they are not abused by a potential parent.
Okay. By the way, are there any laws that are different for domestic abuse?
Okay. Yes. And I want to make a comment here. I am phrasing it as women because it is mostly women who are victims. But sometimes women are arrested for domestic violence, too, because it can be that you've been abused and you can't take it anymore. And you may find yourself either you hitting someone, throwing something at your spouse, or, taking a knife and trying to protect yourself, and you wind up getting arrested. Getting arrested for domestic violence in the state of Florida is really difficult because there's a whole bunch of rules specific to domestic violence. Most crimes, you can post a bond immediately. There's a schedule of how much the bond is. There is no bond for domestic violence. So, if you're arrested for domestic violence, you usually sit in court for about 24 hours until you go in front of a special domestic violence judge. And then that judge will look to see if you have any prior arrest, will look at the situation, and then put his restrictions. For instance, he may say that you have to wear a monitor, you may have to go and take anger management classes, you may have to post a higher bond. So they treat domestic violence, if you're arrested, much more severely, whether it's a male that's arrested or a female that's arrested. So it's very important, if you are arrested for this type of a crime, to immediately hire an attorney, because domestic violence, unlike many other crimes, I'm sure people in your audience, Robert, has heard of expunging a record or sealing a record. In Florida, you get one opportunity to seal your record, because everybody can make a mistake, okay? And you don't want that to affect you for the rest of your life. So if you're arrested for, let's say you went into Publix and you took an item and you want that erased from your record, you can do that, okay, once in your lifetime. But if you are arrested only once for domestic violence and you're found guilty of it, you can never erase that.
Really?
It's one of the exceptions to the expungement and sealing law. You cannot seal or expunge an arrest for domestic violence. So it's important to have good defense attorney if you are accused of that, to try to make sure it doesn't go on your record.
Okay. And what happens if the police end up coming to your house on a domestic abuse call? And what particularly happens?
Well, you know, a lot of people say nothing. Well, that's not true. Usually someone's going to get arrested. And that's because when they, remember, this is a very hot situation. When the cops are called, police officers are called to a home, it's usually a heightened time of awareness. There's fighting back and forth. There could be weapons in the home. And the police are very easy. They separate the spouses. They see who has any type of bruises. They hear what the stories are. And most likely, one of the two spouses is going to get arrested and be arrested for domestic violence and be taken to jail. And it's a harrowing experience. You get your handcuffs put on behind your back. You're put in the police car. You're transported to a station. You're photographed. You're fingerprinted. You're put in a cell. It's a cell with many other people. There's no private bathrooms. It's an experience that nobody ever wants to live in or to experience, because it's something you're never going to forget. So if you're a victim of domestic violence, don't let him get away with it. Ask for help. There's help there for you. And if you're wrongly accused of domestic violence, it's also important for you to hire an attorney to fight for your rights. And you know, like I said previously, Robert, I'm offer a free consultation to anyone in your audience who wants to pick up the phone and call me. Let me give you my number. Let me give everybody in the audience a number. The phone number is 954-463-1225. If you call, you'll speak to me, and I'll give you a free initial consultation. We'll go over what your rights are, and I'm sure we can come up to something to help you. We have payment plans, and we'll come up with a way to make sure that you get the best defense possible.
Okay. And do you want to give out your email address also?
Absolutely. My email address is my last name, which is Reisman, RAISMAN, at Defending You, which is similar to our website address. It's DEFENDINGYOU.com, because I am here to help defend you, and together we will be defending you. And that's how we came up with that website and that email address.
Okay. You've covered a lot, but just as a overall, what's the best advice you can give somebody, man or woman, if they are arrested?
Okay. Number one, never speak to a police officer without an attorney present.
So if they stop you in your car and they pull you over, say nothing?
Say nothing, because they're going to, whatever you say, they're going to twist it and turn it and try to use it against you. If a police officer comes to your house and says, "Sir, we're doing an investigation, we'd like to speak to you," you have a right to have an attorney present. Never speak to an officer without an attorney. That is a constitutional right that you have.
And so many people don't.
And I can't begin to tell you how many people do confess. And, you know, using a confession against an individual, there's nothing worse than your own words.
Trying to talk their way out of it. Or,
And, you know, a police, you know, this is a very interesting aside. I'm going to be quick about this, right? But it's an important point. The United States Supreme Court said police officers can lie to you to get you to make a confession.
Really?
And it's legal. They can tell you, "I'm going to let you go. Don't worry about it. Let me just hear your side of the story. You're going to, you know, you're going to be," and you won't go home. You're going to just bury yourself further. So don't ever think you can outsmart the police. Just ask to have representation. The Constitution of the United States gives you that right. Exercise that right. Protect yourself. Don't speak to an officer without an attorney present. That's the best advice I can give anyone arrested.
That's very, very important. Let's just talk about it for a moment. What are the defenses you may have in a criminal case? Various types of cases.
Okay. Well, when if it involves any kind of a stop, an encounter, there's always issues of whether or not the police have a right to come up to you in the first place. Unless they have reasonable suspicion, they can ask you, you know, "Robert, please stop. Talk to me. I want to ask you some questions." If you're not doing anything, you have a right, believe it or not, to turn around and walk away from that police officer. Yes. There's an exception called Terry versus Ohio, which says that the police officer can briefly search you if they think that you have weapons, if they see a bulge in your pocket. But for that, you can turn right around and walk away from the police officer if there's no reasonable suspicion you've engaged in any type of illegal activity. Okay.
Yet I'm willing to bet that 9 out of 10 people, if they were stopped by a police officer anywhere, on the street, in their car, in the front of their garage, they're going to, well, he's a police officer, I guess I better talk to him.
They're going to acquiesce,
Yeah.
and that's what they're relying
Yeah.
upon.
Yeah.
They're relying upon you saying, oh my God, it's a police officer, I must have to be able to cooperate. You don't have to. So we will evaluate, was the stop legal?
Right.
Was the arrest legal? Is the search legal, where they may find whatever it is that they have, documents, computers? You know, no more and more they're looking for your cell phone and information's on your cell phone. You know, they have to have a warrant before they go into your phone, okay?
Right.
And, you know, you might have a closed item or like a briefcase, many people, or a purse. If you're not being arrested, they can't go into that private purse, suitcase, without your permission or a warrant. And if you're in your home, my God, you have a lot of rights. Unless they have a warrant to arrest you, they cannot come into your home. It's your sanctity. The United States Supreme Court has given people more rights in their homes. So they cannot come into your house and search your house unless you give them permission. That's the exception, okay? So if a police officer knocks on your door, you want to find out, why are they there? Do they have a warrant? You're allowed to look at the warrant. If they have a warrant, you must comply. But if they don't have a warrant, don't let them search your house. You have a right to privacy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So those are things that we look at. And then, of course, you know, is the interrogation, where they're asking you questions and getting information to try to use against you. Was that done lawfully? Everybody's heard of their Miranda rights,
Right.
okay?
Yes.
So you do have your right to request an attorney. And they have to tell you that. And you have
They have to give you the whole Miranda
there is
explanation?
correct. There's an entire procedure that they have to follow. And if they violate that and you still confess, you can suppress the confession based upon the fact that there was a violation of your Miranda
Right,
rights.
I've heard of
So
that.
we will look at that. And most confessions these days are videotaped. So that gives us an opportunity as attorneys to look at them. And then we see the circumstances of the confession. Did they prevent you from going to the bathroom? Did they prevent you from sleeping? You know, and so there's a lot of different things that a trained eye with an attorney with an experience can look at to evaluate. And many times, you know, you're being arrested based upon a witness making a complaint against you. So you have to look at the credibility of those witnesses. And you may need a private investigator, because what happens if someone's mad at you and they say that you did something and you didn't do it? So the credibility of the witnesses might play a role of investigating a case. Every case that walks through the door of Reisman and Reisman is treated seriously because it affects you. And if it affects you, it's important to you. And you need someone who's going to be your advocate, who's there protecting you in your corner. Because remember, it's your criminal case involves your liberty, your freedom. And that's the greatest thing that anybody has. If your liberty's taken away, if you're locked up, there's nothing worse than that, except for, God forbid, bad health. Okay, your reputation. Once you're said that you're a criminal, you're a felon, you have a lot of rights that you lose. And it's going to be a label that follows you for the rest of your life. And you don't want that. So you've got to fight for yourself, and you have to make sure that you have the best protection possible. And it's available out there. And for any listening in the audience, and if they can't afford an attorney, we have a system in place where you can entitle to a public defender to help you. And that's many women these days, you know, they don't have the resources potentially to hire an attorney. So then you do have a right to request a public defender, and make sure the public defender is working for you. And if you're not happy, use your voice, tell the judge, my public defender is not working for me. They can ask to get another public defender appointed. You're there. You've got to be your best advocate, because you're the only one who can protect yourself. And especially women, many times they feel that they're in a position that they don't have any power. You're the best person to control your power, and make sure you exercise those rights. It's very, very important.
Okay. What about something called a bond hearing? What is that all about?
Okay. So we spoke a little bit about this. I touched on this. When a person is arrested, there is a schedule about how much money you're going to have to post in order to get out of jail. Because remember, under Florida law, and any law in the United States, you are presumed innocent. So just because you're arrested doesn't mean you're guilty of that crime. So what bond is, it's a requirement that will make you come back to court. So they decide there's a monetary amount that you're going to have to post. And this will assure your presence in court when it's required that you appear. When you have a bond, you can either post it in cash if you have all the funds, in which case when your case is closed, the bond money is returned to you. Or if you cannot afford a bond, you can hire a bonds company to post the bond for you. For instance, if your bond is $10,000, the bond company will charge you a 10% fee, okay?
10% of the face of the bond.
Correct,
right?
and that's all you'll have to come up with,
right.
And then they'll post the bond for you and you can get out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially people like women who may not, or men who don't have $10,000 laying around, it's important to know that you can hire a bond company to post that bond for you. You lose your 10% fee, that's the fee that the bondsman keeps, but then you don't have to come up with the rest of the money. Usually, as long as you're local, you have a residence, and you're stable, the bond company will work with you.
What about that classic line that I want to make one phone call?
Okay.
Now, are you constitutionally allowed to make a call, or what happens if they don't allow you to? If you can't reach a lawyer, you're
Robert,
in
that's a
trouble.
great question. And when you're entitled to make that phone call, okay,
exactly.
that's important too. You're not entitled to make it on the side of the road.
Right.
You're not allowed to make
Can't
it.
just whip out my cell phone.
No, you can't. You're not allowed to make it. When you're at the police station, you can ask first to speak to an attorney, and they have to cease questioning.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that at that moment you're allowed to pick up the phone and call the lawyer. Asking for the lawyer just means that the interrogation ceases. It doesn't mean that you then get a phone, a telephone and can call your lawyer. Usually, when the booking process is complete, you're then allowed to make one phone call. And most people use it to call a bondsman, believe it or not, because they want to get out of there.
Imagine, yeah.
And when you get that call, there's usually numbers right in front of you with a host of bondsmen, because they'll contact your family relatives for you to help you get and raise that bond to get out of there.
Yeah. I can see that. Okay. Now, what happens, supposing I am placed on probation, and I have an argument with my wife, she gets order protection against me, the judge says, okay, I'm going to put you on probation for 6 months, 12 months, and what if I do something to violate that order or violate my probation order? What happens?
Well, Robert, that's also very important. When you originally get charged with a crime, the judge has a right to either adjudicate you or give you something called a withhold of adjudication. If it's usually your first offense, you're going to get a withhold of adjudication. Many states don't give you that. But if you get a withhold, that means that you're not going to have a conviction. If you have a violation of probation, now they can change that withhold to an adjudication, and you're going to have a record. So you will usually get arrested on a violation of probation. You stay in jail during that time until the probation order is terminated.
Right, I see. And quickly, you hear about the term malicious prosecution.
Right.
You get arrested, and it turns out that they arrested you wrongfully, or you're the wrong person. They got you by your license plate. Maybe they think you violated a warrant, and they pull you on the side of the road. I had this actually happen to a client of mine. The guy was a multimillionaire. They pulled him over in his Rolls Royce, and it wasn't him. He's the wrong guy. So what's your remedy? What do you do?
Civil remedy. Sue him.
Sue him.
You sue him, and you're
sue the police department.
Yes, you
sue
can.
The city.
You can. You have your rights have been violated.
Right.
You sue, and you will get a monetary reward for it.
Right.
Because if you spend time in jail, obviously you're going to be entitled to some repercussions there. And we've been successful in helping you do that as well, and you can get your money back.
Great. Well, this has been an incredibly informative show. One of my best, actually, giving such vital information. I hope that my viewers and listeners were taking notes today, because a lot of this could really get you out of a jam or save you a lot of trouble, a lot of aggravation, possibly keep you from ending up in jail. And I want to thank Helene tremendously for showing up today. Helene, you're brilliant, and you really are. I've given you a couple of clients over time. You're just marvelous in the results you've been able to obtain. So again, I hope that my viewers and listeners will consult with you if they have any need. So once again, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again next week. Again, this is Robert Seibel, bidding you a wonderful afternoon and a happy weekend.
I want to thank you for viewing and listening today to the show Ask Robert, The Women's Prophet. I have enjoyed bringing you another show on the subjects of women's legal, financial, and social issues. I hope you have gained some new knowledge, as knowledge is power, which should help you to a better life. If you have a question or are interested in becoming a sponsor, kindly contact me here at this station at 888-721-0074 or send me an email to robert@askrobert.co. Also, if you might wish to be a guest on my show, please contact me and describe your occupation. Tune in next week for another informative show. Until then, be well. Thank you.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
If you have investments and feel they haven't made enough for you to retire on, or if you just want to learn how extra money can be made from home, do what thousands of people have done. Hop in your car and head over to Online Trading Academy. Learn their patented rules-based strategy for trading. It shows how to pick the right investments like stocks, options, futures, and Forex, how they make money not only when